All right, we are recording, and as often, I almost want to say as usual, I have the study guide up. Now, this study guide is not that long. That's it, okay? But I have a study guide for cranial nerves. Sorry, that was last week. I have the study guide for spinal nerves and spinal cord and reflexes up. So I'm going to switch over to showing the camera so I can point things out. And aha, this will work. Oh, that's not good. Okay. Aha, I have a pointer. This is what I want, a pointer. So I can point at things. You guys should each grab a spinal cord model. They're pretty close. I'll bring one down to you so I don't have to walk it in. There you go. We're going to walk through the parts for the spinal cord. I'm going to zoom out so that actually all fits. Oh, I guess that's all the out I've got to work with. And then, hopefully this will keep recording while we do it, but that displays pretty well. I will go over the parts of the spinal cord, and then we're going to go over spinal nerves. And there are only 8 spinal nerves that they expect you to know in this class. There are plenty others with names, but these are the ones that we need to know. So let's do this really fast. All right, the terms they want you to know. And this is important. I actually, one of the things I changed on the brain PowerPoint, you remember I said, oh, I've been working on this and changing it. Before I had said gyri were areas that were ridges going up and sulci were sunken in. And then I said, oh, and then there are the fissures. Well, all true. However, at that time, I didn't say anything about the sulci being more slender and the fissures being more wide. Here in the spinal cord, that matters. Look at this difference. That and that are drastically different. Do you agree? So this, it's wide. We're going to call that a fissure. Right? And this, we're going to call a sulcus still. So on your study guide, the very first thing is the ventral median fissure, okay? And median just means it's in the middle, but this would be the ventral median fissure. So we have to do dorsal from ventral, and that's actually, on the spinal cord, the most incredibly easy thing ever. Let's move, since that's reflecting, let's move right here. Okay, so now not reflecting. Right here, we have a ganglia, a collection of neuron cell bodies. You see that? That's only on the dorsal side. We call this part going in, carrying signals to the central nervous system, to the spinal cord. This would be the dorsal root of a spinal nerve. Okay, this is a spinal nerve. Good. Spinal nerve could have sensory information, could have motor, could have both. This one has both. All right? So this is spinal nerve, but when we get close to the spinal cord, before we go into the vertebrae, it separates into 2 parts, a dorsal root and a ventral root. And it's super easy to tell which one's which. Pull that out of the way, there you go. You see it a little better. The dorsal root goes up to the dorsal side with a much narrower sulcus, and the ventral root goes down to the ventral side with a much wider fissure. You see it? Everybody good with that? But here's the thing. If I did something tricky on a test, like put it upside down, it doesn't matter. The dorsal root is the one with the ganglia. This is called the dorsal root ganglia. and there's only a ganglia on the dorsal root. Now that's true on both sides. You can see that this drawing doesn't show both, but this model shows there's a dorsal root ganglia on both sides. Does that make sense? No. You can see that ganglia is the sum of the cell bodies of neurons. They could be unipolar or they could be bipolar. Good? Yeah? Okay. But that's a collection of neurons. Now, all that was a long ramble to get to, hey, it's easy to tell dorsal from ventral in the spinal cord. Do you agree? Yeah. All right, so that's fine. The next term, and we're going to be jumping back and forth because I'm going alphabetically through the study guide. The next thing on the study guide is talking about the cauda equina. It means the horse's tail. Equine is horse. All right, so let me zoom in. If you're following along in your textbook, I'll lighten this up to make it prettier, easier to see. But this is in the textbook on page 533. I think it's a better picture. Do you see what looks like a bunch of fibers coming off like a horse's tail? You have all the hairs hanging down, okay? Well, these are a whole bunch of nerve fibers coming down, all right? The actual spinal cord ends a little above that. Look at me being all clever and moving it. At this area, they're calling the conus medullaris. So, anybody remember what medullary or medulla means? The M reminds you of the word middle, okay? So, the last part of the spinal cord tapers in the middle. This little cone right there, that's the last part of the spinal cord that's not a bunch of fibers coming off it and hanging down. Good? So this cone shape in the middle is the conus medullaris. And all the fibers coming off and hanging down, those are the cauda equina, the tail of the horse. Are we good? All right, so we got that. And the next thing after cauda equina that's on your study guide is the central canal. Now we talked about the central canal before. Of course, I lost my pointer. Here's my pointer. So I'll show you what we talked about last week, and then I'll show you what it looks like for this study guide in here. Here we had what I call the Elvis chicken, affectionately. You remember looking at the brain. And in the brain, we have the third ventricle, that's the space between the two thalami. And then we had the fourth ventricle, that's the space down here at the base. Well, you can see it pretty well right there. The space at the base of the cerebellum. And between them, we had the cerebral aqueduct that carried cerebrospinal fluid. So third ventricle full of cerebrospinal fluid, fourth ventricle full of cerebrospinal fluid. We make it at the choroid plexuses, those two choroid plexuses, and we carry it through the cerebral aqueduct. But after the fourth ventricle, we continue down. This side might show it better. This model's not showing as nice as I'd like. But that goes all the way down. There is a canal running down the middle of your spinal cord all the way down to that conus medullaris. Are you with me? So if we look now in your study guide for the spinal cord, here they're showing it cut away one side only, but this is a piece, one side, of a central canal. You're with me? Let me darken that up so it's easier to see. Oh, that's a little too much. This is a central canal. It carries cerebrospinal fluid down the middle of the spinal cord, all the way from the brain all the way to the end. Good? It's lined with ependymal cells that have their cilia that they make a current to wash the fluid, to move the fluid. Good? All right. We also, just like the brain was also surrounded by cerebrospinal fluid, remember, especially in the subarachnoid space, the area below the arachnoid motor. Please tell me that sounds familiar. Okay. Guess what? Same thing. We've got the same three protective layers around the spinal cord. I'm talking about the tough, durable outer layer, the dura mater, right here. And below that, it's a continuous layer, but has lots of little things coming on. The arachnoid mater, and then the intimate contact touching the nervous tissue, the pia mater. Does that sound familiar? Well, this arachnoid mater, the area below it is the subarachnoid space. And in this subarachnoid space, we're talking right there, the whole spinal cord, all the way down, is lined in cerebrospinal fluid. So we're carrying cerebrospinal fluid down the central canal, but we're also surrounding it with cerebrospinal fluid. Are we good? Does it make sense? All right, so we got that. And so we've gone as far as central canal, we've done that. Conus medullaris, we did that already, but we'll throw it back up real quick. The conus medullaris, let's find a better picture than what we had before. We'll